I am Kevin Pate.
So, you know, so thankful that you and your family are here and at Porterfield, and um, just excited to hear your story. And I want to thank you for being a part of the deaconship. And
hmm
I think that's probably been, maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, but just kind of share your childhood. What was your childhood like growing up? And
So I grew up with five brothers and sisters.
oh, wow.
So it was a big family.
Yeah.
Um, it was a close family. We didn't have a lot of money, I would say. It was a one income family. My father was uh, originally a gym teacher, and then later became an elementary school principal. So we were very much a check to check kind of a family. Five, six total kids. My mom had been a teacher, but having six kids, she stayed home and took care of all of us. Um, so we got by with minimal, I would say. We never were lacking,
Hmm.
but we didn't have anything extra.
Yeah.
We didn't go out if we went to McDonald's, that was like a big deal. Like we did not eat out. It was kind of like my mom provided all the food.
Hmm.
Um, so we kind of made do with family things. We were very much we played games with each other. My brothers and I definitely played a lot of sports outside. So it was just it was a close knit family, and we got by with um, without a lot of extras.
Now, you said sports outside. Did you play sports in school or like?
When I was younger, I played like basketball, but I was never good enough to be
Not
never good
something.
enough to be on the first team, and so
Yeah.
I didn't really like to practice this that much. And I was like, I'm not going to practice all the time to sit the last guy on the bench. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like I was good enough to be on the team and not play. I wasn't good enough for me. So I was a runner. I ran cross country. I was decent.
Yeah.
So I ran cross country and track, and that was it. But primarily, it was just like I like to play basketball and baseball and football with my brothers. And this was a time when you'd go outside and play.
Yeah.
You remember those days where we
Hmm.
would actually go outside and play, and that was
Yeah.
like the big thing. It was like that's all we wanted to do was go outside and play whatever sport, whatever season it was, is what sport we would try to play.
Now, did you have neighborhood kids you played with too?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Again, those are the
So,
days where you just get on your bike and you'd ride across to your neighborhood's friend, or we'd go out in the we'd trek through the woods to the other neighborhood. We actually had a competition between our neighborhood and theirs, and we played baseball against each other, and it was a lot of fun.
so what part of where did you live at as a child? Did you live in?
Northeast Ohio.
Okay.
So this was Youngstown area, a little bit
Oh,
north of Youngstown. So Cortland, Ohio is what it's technically.
yeah.
It's almost halfway between Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So yeah, we were. You were either a Cleveland fan or a Pittsburgh fan when I grew up, and I was a Cleveland fan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a Steeler fan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we don't have to fight here, Andy. But
Um, so you talk about church. How did church? Do you always remember going to church, or how did you and your family interact with church?
yeah, so when I was 7, we moved. We had lived in Warren, and then as my younger brother, so I had twin brothers that were born about that time, and we moved out to Cortland,
Okay.
and that's my only memory of starting to go to church. Up to that point, I don't think we ever had, and it was not a conversation that I had. It was just a conversation. All of a sudden, one day, I was like, "Hey, we're going to church." Okay. And so at that point, from that point forward, that's all I knew. It was just like church was part of your life.
Yeah.
You go up, we had Sunday school, we had church, and we'd always have what was called the youth group, similar to like Refuge here, except it was a very small church. So it was
Uh-huh.
it was called the youth fellowship. And there'd be a half dozen, maybe 10 people that would attend every night.
So, what was your view of God at that time? Was it something that seemed distant, or going to church? How did that? How did you going from not having any experience, I guess, to
Yeah, I was thinking about that in preparation for this. Again, I was 7. And so you don't have a lot of memories of before 7. And
yeah,
so for me, God has always been a part of my life. Um, I don't really remember a time when I didn't have faith when I didn't have some knowledge of God. Okay, because again, 7 years old, 6 years old, I don't remember much that happened back then. So to me, it was kind of a natural, it was kind of a matter of fact thing for me.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of like it. I was thinking about it this way. Like, if you ask me, like, obviously I'm a chemistry professor. If you don't know that, but you know that,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, when did you learn chemistry? And it's kind of a process. It's kind of like you learn a little bit, and I'm still learning, right?
Hmm.
I'm still learning a lot of stuff, and I feel like that's kind of how my relationship with Christ and with God started.
Okay.
It was just kind of a matter of fact thing, like, you're going to church. Okay, we're going to church, and then as you learn, as you hear witness and this and that, like, it slowly just impacts you,
Yeah.
and I learn more and more and more, and so I don't know that there was some great moment. It was just kind of a natural progression toward faith.
Yeah. So there was never a time before that that you really questioned God. You already felt like there was a God, and you didn't have that kind of question in your mind.
It's hard to say whether at 6 or 7 whether that was new to me. I really don't. I don't know. I feel like I said, it was just this natural kind of a thing that happened. Maybe just worked through my heart to allow me to accept the truth. Um, but I don't remember it being a moment
Yeah.
where I didn't know and then all of a sudden I did. Like I said, it was more like kind of a gradual process. Now, there's certainly been moments in my life where I think I've taken big steps.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of that initial, uh, what do you call it, acceptance?
Yeah.
It like I said, it was just kind of a slow, gradual process, and matter of fact kind of a thing for me. It was just more of, this is what it is, um, and I don't think I questioned it in that sense.
Yeah. You mentioned that you had moments. So would you care to describe some of those moments, like maybe starting at the beginning of those moments? Or?
Sure. So the earliest thing I remember, and it's fuzzy, right? And I couldn't tell you if it was junior high or high school. Again, I just grew up, and it was part of my life was church, and it was just something I did. And I was drugged there, sure. I was a kid. My parents are dragging me to church. Did I always want to go? Probably not. But I can remember a moment. And it may sound silly, but it was impactful to me. It was a Christmas Eve, and back in the day, like, we were in a pretty small church, and somehow I became the guy that was in charge of the lights, and so I had to sit back in the back, very back pew. There's a little tiny pew in the back, and like, anytime we were going to sing, you stand up. And this is a Methodist church, and so it was like, it's very regimented. So, like, you sang 3 songs, and whenever you sang, you stood up, and so I'd flip on the lights. And then when the song was over, I'd flip back the lights. So the lights were the indication to the congregation that it was time to stand and then time to sit. And so that was my job. And I remember very fuzzy details, but I remember on a Christmas Eve service in the back, and I was junior high or high school, I couldn't tell you, and a very ragged looking, dirty, I describe as dirty. Maybe that's not fair, but that's what I remember. Just somebody, a guy came into our church. I'd never seen him before. He was dressed almost like a bum. I mean, just dressed. And I remember having this moment of thinking, like, it was almost a judgmental kind of a moment, like, what's this guy doing here?
Yeah.
And then I had this moment of revelation that this could be Christ. That this could be, something Jesus sent him, or this is Jesus in the flesh. Something. I had that moment, and like I said, I mean, I'm 54 years old now. This was at least 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It was very impactful. I don't know what it was, but that was one of the first things I've felt a
Well, no,
presence
I
that
think
was
that's what's interesting is like that wasn't. It sounds like it wasn't something that really came from you, right? It was something that you
exactly,
felt like it was from God
exactly.
revealing something to you to look at that person differently.
That's exactly
Because
right.
your initial thought was, "Hey,
Right, and that's why I think it was so impactful for me, because I think that really was maybe the first time of experiencing something almost supernatural.
yeah,
Because yes, I think my first instinct, I was just a dumb kid, right? So I'm just like, who's this guy walking in here, right?
yeah,
And yes, I'm trying to remember the details of it, like, did I feel something or did I just? I don't know, but I remember being
Well, that's what's
touched
interesting
in that
is that,
moment.
like you said, after this many years later, you still have that vivid memory of that moment,
Yeah,
even though you may not know all the details of it. it was a defining moment
Right,
for you.
right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely a defining moment of hearing, maybe hearing God, maybe hearing His voice and saying like, no, 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 like that you're not judging. You know, this is an important person, whatever,
Yeah.
whoever it was. Um, I honestly don't know. To this day, I don't know. Was Christ in that church in that moment in, you know,
I
the physical
believe. Yeah.
body? I tend to believe it was as well.
Well, I think that, God can use those moments where He reveals things to us that you just know without a doubt He spoke to you.
Hmm.
It wasn't you that had that thought; it was God speaking to you
Right,
to have a change of heart.
right. I think one of the things I was thinking about, and my wife has been very important in terms of her and her parents, very, very faithful, and more so than I have been for much of my life. In the sense that, you know, when an event would happen, they would always give credit to Christ. They'd always give credit to God, and a lot of times, you know, I would be a little skeptical. It was just kind of like, yeah, that just kind of happened, you know, and they always would be like, you know, thank you, Jesus, you know, um, and again, like I said, a lot of times I would just kind of like, well, maybe. Um, but I've had enough moments, especially in the last few years,
Yeah.
where I'm past that, where I finally see like these are not coincidences, the kind of things that occur.
Yeah.
Um, I'll tell you one that happened very recently. I mean, I've had a huge change just in the last 3 4 years. The men's group that I work with, they hear about this all the time. Like, matter of fact, we were doing the MOV 45 thing, which is a training thing that a handful of us in the men's group have done. Um, and we've been reading this book called the Titus 10 as part of the program. And a recent chapter, I think it was like chapter 9 of this book, it talked a lot about how so many men in the church are lukewarm Christians. And it was very convicting for me because as I'm reading this, I'm like, that's where I've been most of my life. I grew up in the church. We've never stopped going to church. You know, when my wife and I got married, we were living out in Connecticut in graduate school. We church hopped a little bit. We had a couple of churches that we went to, but, you know, we mostly went every week. And when we got to Marietta, well, first we went to Kansas for a year. We found a church there. Got to Marietta, we church stopped, and we went to a church for 12 years, went to another one for 10 years before we come here. We've always been in church. And I've actually always been active in church as well. Like I've taught Sunday schools. I've done things in the back. Again, I've kind of been organizing things. I've done a lot of things, but it's still, when I look at it, I was like, you're still lukewarm. I still wasn't all in terms of my relationship with Christ. It was more just like it was something you do.
Yeah.
You go to church, and if I'm going to be there, I'm going to help, and I'm going to help stack the chairs. I'm just going to do this servicing. I'm just going to do those kind of things. But I don't feel like I was all in.
Kind of going through the motions, and it wasn't like a fire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if it was going through the motion, but it certainly wasn't a fire. Like, I mean, I was genuinely doing things. I mean, I was genuinely trying to teach Sunday school, and I was genuinely helping with things. But yeah, the fire wasn't there necessarily. Um, it was more. It was service for service. It was like I felt like I'm serving, but I wasn't. I don't know if I was serving God. I was serving something. I was just doing it. Um, and then I became involved in an Emmaus again, something that you and I've talked a little bit about,
Yeah.
and that was a huge change.
So you were in it before, and then
So before we got married, my wife and I, her parents wanted us to go on an Emmaus weekend, which is just like a 3 day retreat. Um, it's a non-denominational thing, very spiritual, really powerful thing to do. And so, sure, we'll go on this thing. And we went. You know, this is back in 1995. We went, and it was very powerful. When you came home, and you're on this cloud, you're just living up here. Um, But if you don't feed it, that fire burns out.
yeah.
And so we went back to Connecticut. I was in graduate school at the time, and we did not stay a part of an Emmaus community. And the fire it just went out. Um, and so we got here, and I wasn't even interested in doing it anymore. It was just kind of like I did my thing. I went to it, and I had a friend, probably about 8 to 10 years ago, who said you should be part of it again. And it's like, you know, I don't want to. I mean, I just maybe,
Yeah.
you know, kind of that kind of a thing. And kind of kept asking me year after year, like, do this. And I'd always have an excuse. It's like, I can't go in the middle of the fall like I'm teaching, or in the middle of the spring I'm teaching. Finally, I got to 3 years ago, and I was on sabbatical. I had no more excuse. I couldn't say no. I couldn't. But at that point, it's just disobedience if I didn't do it. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And that changed my life again. Being a part of that, I came out of that and again went back on that spiritual high. And I came home from that, and I told my wife, I said, I need to go to a different church. I'm not getting fed in the way that I know that I can be fed. And we talked, and I was like, I'd wanted to try Porterfield for years, and we said, let's try it. And we haven't turned back from that. Okay, now the whole reason I'm telling you this whole story is because one of the key moments, I think, was last summer. I was in Denver for a conference, and I love the mountains. I mean, that's what we did when I was a kid. We'd go out and we'd go to national parks. That's what we did every summer. That's all we did. We traveled the country, going to national parks. It was an awesome experience. I was in Denver for like a week, and I knew I was going to have some free time in the middle of it. So I was like, I'm gonna go to Rocky Mountains, and I'm gonna go hiking. And so I did. And I planned to do this. Now, I was also a month from there going to be giving a talk at Emmaus, and the talk was on discipleship. And there's a lot of things that go into this story, so I'm sorry if it gets long.
No, that's good.
The talk was about discipleship. Now, since having come to Porterfield and being exposed to praise music, it really had a huge impact on me. To the point where now that's the only radio station, not only music station I have programmed in my car is The Message on Sirius XM. That's all we listen to. Same with my wife. Like we used to listen to classic rock, and like I don't even turn it on anymore. It's like it's The Message, and so we listen to this music all the time. And one song that really spoke to me was "I Speak Jesus," and as I was starting in my mind to put together what I might give a talk on discipleship, I decided I wanted to give a talk with "I Speak Jesus" as the central point for it.
Yeah.
And talk about the song and this and that. And so that's the background for this. So I go out to Rocky Mountains and I'm hiking, and I wanted to do a huge hike. And I was like, I'm going to go to the top of a mountain and I'm going to write my talk up there. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my laptop with me and I'm going to go up there and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to write this talk. And so the first day I went up to the top of this mountain. Actually, it wasn't a very long hike. It was like an hour-long hike or something like that. And the plan was to get up. When I get up there, it's pretty cold. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this right now. But in the meantime, I had a playlist of, I think it was like 15 songs I had on my phone, and I had my earplugs in or my earbuds in. And it was just cycling through that randomly. So it's 15 songs on a scramble. I feel like it was like over 2 hours worth because there was they were all live songs from YouTube. One of them was a 30-minute extended version of a song.
Wow.
And I forget what it was now. It's a great song, but I can't remember what it was now. So anyways, there's about 2 hours worth of music on this thing, and there's 15 or so songs on it. So they're just playing randomly throughout the entire time I'm hiking. I'm sitting there atop this mountain. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it later because it's cold, windy and stuff like that. And so I was like, I'll find time later. I stand up. I stand up to leave, and "I Speak Jesus" comes on right at that exact moment. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Because I went up there to write this thing, and at the moment that I stepped away, that song came on. So I stood up there and listened to the song, and I get done, the sun comes out, it's like shining right on me. It was a moment. So I hiked back down the mountain, and I forget what I did the rest of the day, but I go out the next day, and I find another. This time it's like a 16-mile hike or something like that. It was incredible, and I hike up and up and up and up, and I got to this one point. It was like I could either go to the right or to the left. The right was like going to be up higher up the mountain. The left was going to be to this lake, and I've always loved mountain lakes. I was like, I think I'm standing there. I was like, I think I'm going to turn left. As soon as I make this turn, the song comes on again. Wow. It starts at that exact moment. So this happens twice now that like at a pivotal moment, this song that I had planned to write months ago. I thought I had planned it right. I should back up and say that.
Yeah.
I thought I had planned this. Looking back at it later, I realized it wasn't my plan at all. But at the time, I'm thinking, this is my idea.
Yeah.
Well, this ends up happening like 2 more times where at like a pivotal moment, this song comes on. There was one it was after that trip. I drove back because 16 miles. I mean, I could barely walk at the end of it. It was up a hill and then back down, or up a mountain and back down a mountain. And I get back, and I forget why, but I went back and I took a shower at the hotel, and then I was headed back out through the park, and I don't even remember where I was planning to go. But as I was coming through it, I see a little rainbow, just a little bit of a rainbow, and I was like, "Oh, that'd be cool to get that picture." So I go to the next pull off, and I get out, and it's kind of faded. And it's like, well, I took a couple pictures. You can barely even see it in there.
Yeah.
It's like, that was cool. Get back in my car, song comes on. I was like, what's going on here? And then I hear,
God's wanting you to take notes.
yeah, well, I forget if I'd even started writing at this point. I honestly don't know. I'm hearing or sensing, excuse me, I'm either hearing or sensing, go to the top. It wasn't an audible voice, but it was so clear. Go to the top,
Yeah.
and meaning I took it to mean the top of the mountain, the top of the road, and so I drove up to the top of this mountain. It's now I'm getting my roads mixed up. I think it's called Trail Ridge Road. It goes like 14,000 feet. It's like the main road through Rocky Mountain National Park. I think I got the name wrong on that.
That's all right.
And I get to like almost the highest point, and the sky is just black, right? And it's like it's starting to rain, and I pull off just because like I don't want to drive through this.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was writing. Pretty soon the sky like lights up. The sky is like from the west starts to brighten up, and I can't remember these details, but I either just decided to look behind me or I was told to look behind me. I don't remember the details at this point. And back there is an absolutely perfect rainbow from horizon to horizon.
Oh, wow.
It was actually even a double rainbow when I get out of the car and actually looked at it. And it was the most amazing thing because it was like, I had stopped to see this rainbow. This song comes on again. Go to the top. Go to the top. I couldn't have seen this. I would not have experienced that had I not been at the top.
Yeah.
Because in one direction, and I have pictures, I sent them to Adam. In one direction, if you look in one way, it's sunny, blue sky, and you took the other way, and it's gray with this perfect rainbow behind it. I couldn't have seen it from anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so things like this started happening that I couldn't deny anymore.
Yeah.
I've got a good friend in Emmaus, and he says, I don't believe in coincidences. And I'm to that point now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I probably would chalk up a lot of things to coincidence.
I think sometimes we have a hard time kind of recognizing that God wants to continually speak to us. Maybe it's because we
Right.
feel like we're unworthy, or why would God want to orchestrate that for us? But He does. I mean,
Mhm.
I think there's been many times in my life that whether He's used a song or whether He's used creation, and that's, I think, the cool thing about your story here is God was working it through both,
Right.
and lining them up to be a moment for you to take what you were feeling and what you were expressing, putting it on paper for you to have the right lesson that He wanted you to share.
Yeah, exactly.
And so He was building that moment just for you to have a personal connection with Him.
Right. And I totally agree with that. And I think not only like it was so impactful for me, but I think more so, maybe not more so, at least as much, it was for the 30 men
Yep.
that I was going to go back and give this message to,
Absolutely.
who weren't going to have the same impact that I did because I experienced it.
Yeah.
And there was more to that those few days. I remember I was sitting at the very top, and I texted Michelle, like, there's no texting, like, on top of a mountain. But I got to where there was a lodge or something, and I was able to connect to their wireless or something like that. And I sent her a text. I was like, you wouldn't believe what's happening. And as soon as I get home, she's like, you got to tell me about this story. And I relate as much, probably better then because it was fresher.
Yeah.
But even the next day I went out to this hike, and I sent another picture. Like, I was walking up this really steep path. I'm not sure where it was going to. It was shorter, and just like the sun, it was unbelievable. I can't describe. It was just like this, the way the sky, the sun, everything about it. It was like I knew. It was like I was walking into heaven. Is what it felt like. That's what I felt in that
Yeah.
sense. It was like it's like I'm walking toward heaven. Is really what it felt like. So yeah, he's used that with me. Here's another one, and you'll understand this one because you set this up. About a year ago, last spring, something like that. You remember you reached out to me and you said, "I've got a guy who wants to, who wants somebody to lead Bible study
Yeah.
at the Hope Ministries, Hope Center Ministries."
Yes.
He asked if I was willing to do it, and I remember at the time thinking, "I could do that. I'm not going to say no to God. That's been my change in my life. It's like I don't say no to God anymore." And it's like, okay, I don't really know how good I'll be at this, but I'm not saying no. And I never heard from him. And I forgot about it. I mean, this was back in the spring, I want to say,
Yeah.
right? This was back in
It's
January,
been a
February,
little while.
March. It was
Yeah.
a long time ago. To the point where I'd forgotten. I'd just written it off. I thought maybe they'd found somebody else. I thought maybe they just didn't need me anymore. I really didn't know. I was busy enough that it wasn't like bothering me. It was kind of like I'm not going to say no to God, but the fact that it didn't come through, it was no sweat off my back. It was just kind of like, okay, that's cool. Somebody else is doing it. They don't need me. I mentioned not in here, but in the form that I filled out that when I drive to work now, this has been out for a while. I pray and I pray out loud in my car as I drive to work back and forth. Well, to work. I typically don't on the way home, but to work I always do. And in recent months, I'd been praying for two things specifically. One was opportunity, because as I've been involved in the men's group a lot, I'm very open with fellow Christians. I can be very open with who I am and what I believe and giving praise to God. But you put me in a situation with others and I tend to clam up and I tend to not, don't want to rock the boat. And so it's like I was praying for opportunities to reach people who I'm not comfortable with necessarily.
Yeah.
That was one big one. The second one I had been praying, and I think some of it stemmed from even my experience out there in the mountains. I've been praying that I would hear him, that I would recognize God when he was reaching out to me. I'm careful not to say that he would talk to me because I know he does, but more that I would be aware of it. And so those two things I've been praying constantly. Like, give me opportunities to share your name, to share your word, to share the gospel, and help me to recognize when you're trying to get through to me. I've been praying this pretty consistently for about a week. I got a text that afternoon. A text. It's like that's the 4x4 across the head that I need.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, I see it. And it was from your guy. 6 months, 8 months, 9 months after the fact, asking if I would come lead Bible service or
That's
Bible
awesome.
study.
Yeah.
And it was an answer to two prayers that I had been praying that very morning on that drive in. And it was like, you can't deny that anymore.
Yeah.
I can't. It's not a coincidence.
No.
Like he knows how clueless I am, and sometimes he has to like hit me with something like a text.
Mm-hmm.
How could I miss that, right? At the same time, the answer to here's an opportunity. Why don't you go work with these guys?
Yeah.
And again, I've come to realize in the last few years, especially, how active he is in my life.
Well, the cool thing that I think is neat is how God's moving in our church to reach more men for Christ, and that was something we've been praying for 3 years, and God's continually using people, of course, like Scott, like you guys have a leadership team, and I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that, but how God's been using this ministry here at church to kind of help people to do more things like, teaching a Bible study to, it's kind of giving power to men to say, hey, you can really be a difference maker here. And
Right.
really,
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I'm smiling because 2 years ago, I don't know when it was. It was May. It's probably May of 2023. three, that my wife and Ashley were somewhere. I forget what. If they could have been a band. I don't know what it was. They were out of town. And it was a Saturday morning. Actually, it could have been like Science Olympiad or something like that. It was a Saturday morning. They had a men's breakfast here. I'm not one who would, in the past, I wouldn't have done this on my own. I think that's part of being a lukewarm kind of a thing, is that when we did stuff at our old church, it's primarily because my wife would tell me we're going, and then we go. And there were many times where she was out of town or something like that. I'd be like, well, I'm sleeping in Sunday morning, and so it was not me to be like, you know what, I'm going to go to a men's breakfast at the church. Like it wasn't really me. So I look at it as it was a tiny step of obedience that I was like, I'm going to go and just go, and because I wanted to get involved here. I knew this one where I wanted to be my home. So I came to that. I sat with a couple of guys. I don't even remember who they were anymore because I didn't know very many people at the time. We'd been coming here for a while, but I knew a select few people, but I didn't really know many people. Sat with these guys. Turns out both of them were been involved in Emmaus. So I was like, there again,
Yeah,
God
yeah.
put me in a table with these guys from Emmaus. And so I was like, we talked about that for a while. And then pretty soon they introduced me. I think they thought I was younger than I am. They introduced me to Scott and Nathan. And they start talking about the men's group, which is for guys under 50 or something like that, is the way it was described to me. And it sounds great. And I'm sitting there the whole time going like, I'm 52. And so, I'm like, that's cool. And they're inviting me to this and that. And
Yeah.
it was great. And then finally, it ended. I went home. I think they'd give me their numbers or something like that. And so I think I texted Scott. I'm pretty sure it was Scott. And I was like, I really appreciate that. But just so you know, like I'm in the old guys group. Like I'm not in your.
Hey, I'm 52 too, so don't feel bad.
well, it was described to me as like this under 50 group or
Yeah.
something like that. And I was like, well, I appreciate it, but honestly, I'm not in your category anymore. And they're like, well, just come anyways. And this was, like I said, it was May, so they weren't meeting throughout the summer that year. They hadn't met in the summer in the past. And so I had all summer to think about this and pray about this. And I was like, I don't want to be the old guy that walks in and it's just like, hey guys, can I be a part of your group? I didn't want to be that. And eventually God just kind of kept pushing me. He was like, just go. And I did. And it has been the biggest blessing that I can remember. And thanks to Scott and Nathan, because they encouraged me to keep doing this. And I've thanked them multiple times. I give them credit all the time. It's like, I didn't want to do this because I felt out of place. But back to your question then. So the biggest thing has been this brotherhood of encouragement, of support, of accountability. I mean, we share in that group. Like we share our struggles. We share struggles that we have had. We share struggles that maybe family members have had. We keep it intimate, of course.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell anybody's story, but we
exactly.
share. And then where we struggle, we hold each other accountable. I won't name names, but I'll just say because I'm willing to accept my own. So one of the sins I've probably struggled with the most has been my tongue.
Yeah.
The tongue, creates a big fire, right? And so oftentimes it's not even intentional. Oftentimes it's like, because I think I'm funny. My wife will tell you that, right? He thinks he's funny. He's sarcastic, right? He's cynical, right? And I say a lot of things that I think are the funniest thing ever, but they hit in a way that's biting. And, I think it's been true with my kids, certainly with my wife, that when you look back, you realize that you're not that funny,
Well,
and a lot of those things you say
I don't
aren't.
think sometimes we realize the power of our words, that
Yeah.
our words can bring life or death.
Yeah.
That a lot of times, our tongue is something that we need to be mindful of, because if we're too careless, we can say
Right.
things that hurt people.
Yeah, it's certainly been the case for me, and it actually took. I was going to say Steve Elder one time. I was relaying a conversation, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that was very passive aggressive," and I never thought of it in those terms, and that bit me. And I've told him that as well. I was like, that was a brother. That was being a brother in that
Yep.
moment, because it convicted me and it made me think, like, you know what? Yeah, it really is passive aggressive what I'm doing, and that's not appropriate. So three of us, I won't say who they are, who have all kind of admitted to having that same kind of struggle. We text back and forth constantly. Anytime one of us slips up, we text each other, we pray for each other,
That's
we
awesome.
hold each other accountable. Um, and there have even been times where I remember one guy sent something. He's like, "I said this to my wife," and and because I'm still a doofus in the end. It's like I joke, I was like, "That's funny," or something like that, and the other guy chimed in and was like, it's kind of like, "No, that's not funny."
Yeah.
So even in that moment where I didn't even do the original thing, and I was just communicating with a buddy, just kind of
Yeah.
just goofing around, it's like we need to change that attitude, where it's really not funny. Even if you think you're trying to be funny, like it's not funny because the words can't hurt.
And one of the things I think that's cool that God's been doing in that group, and just like what you're saying, it's for all of us that as we grow, God starts working on other things that maybe we don't realize. It's like, oh, I maybe this is an area where I need to give God a chance to improve on me and mold me and shape me to be more like Him. Because a lot of times we can have the best thought, like I'm doing a good job representing Christ, and things like that can kind of show us a new avenue where maybe I'm not where I should be,
Hmm.
and it helps us to continue to walk with humility and understanding that we're not perfect, and that we need support around us.
Yeah. There's no question about that for me. Again, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I mean, I think that each of these events
Yeah.
has is is planned, is structured, is there's a reason behind it. Um, I had an experience just teaching Sunday school the other day, which I won't go into any details 'cause I think I'd be um, saying something I probably shouldn't, telling somebody's story that I probably shouldn't. But um, there's a situation that we were talking about. We were talking about kind of having the brotherhood and the uplifting people and support and all this kind of things. And and Steve Elder was leading this, and I'm sitting there in a moment, and I was like, I want to say something to one of the people in this room. And it was again, it's just like I just felt this spirit. I felt the call to say something, and so I did.
Hmm.
And afterwards, the person said, "Were you guys talking ahead of time?" And I said, "No." And this person said, "Because I just had the same conversation with Steve." And again, it was like, and I walked out with Steve. I was like, "That was crazy."
Yeah.
Like, but not a
It's,
crazy. Like
yeah.
to me, it was just
It's
like
not crazy, but
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like it was powerful. Like that's
Yeah.
probably the right word because it was the spirit.
Yeah.
Like I'm not the kind of person who would normally say what I said in that moment.
I think a lot of times, even, for me, it's not me coming up with something. It's God inspired, right? It's
Right.
God's revelation to me, in whether it's creation or a song or, a scripture or verse, that in that moment God reveals, or even in the moment like that where you're just prayerfully thinking about, okay, what do I need to do here? And sometimes it's not even we're always thinking about that way. God just intervenes
Hmm.
and says, what we need to do next.
Right. I am certain of that now. I mean, again, I used to like, oh, what, but I'm certain of it now that I don't believe what I'm doing is my own doing.
Yeah.
That I believe that it is God's doing. Now my train of thought I had a story I was just going to tell you. If it comes back to me, I'll share it.
Sure.
It was that exact thing. Oh, I know what it was. It was about Emmaus again. So what I learned in the first year. So I the first year I went back to this after like 25 years or something like that because we had gone in 1995. I came back in 2020 or 2021, something like that. Um, and I was asked to give a talk about basically study, basically on what it means to study the Bible and the different things that you can do to study and to grow and things like that. And it was convicting in that sense as well because I knew at the time I was like I'm not really doing these things, and so I'm standing up in front of these guys and instructing them on all these things that you need to be doing in order to better grow your faith.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, going, you're a fraud because you're not doing most of these things. But God used that because now I'm doing them all, right? And so I look back at that moment, and so even though at the time I was thinking. I'm not the right person to be delivering this. I can look back with hindsight and realize I was exactly the person to be delivering that because God was using it to change me.
Yeah.
And now I do it pretty much everything in there, everything I talked about. I do all those things daily. But what I was going to say was I learned from the next talk, because that one I all put it all together all by myself, right? I put that one together. It's like, it's all me. The next talk, God laid it on me. Then I went to the story I relayed to you earlier. God provided me the entire story.
Yeah.
I know it's not my work anymore. So when I was giving a talk this past fall, and I said, I'm not even going to look at this. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to work on this. I'm not going to try to come up with a plan because I knew God was going to give me a story, and that's exactly what happened. If you want me, I can tell you that story. Or
Sure.
So, I think it's powerful in this sense because I decided, right? There's a big sin, right?
Yep.
I decided I was going to Washington D.C. this fall because I go to conference like usually twice a year, at least once a year for my job.
Yeah.
And so I was going to be in Washington D.C. this summer, and so I was like, all right, I got this. Shenandoah National Park, right? That's an hour or two outside of Washington D.C. I'm gonna go to Washington D.C. and I'm gonna climb the top of Shenandoah National Park and I'm gonna write my talk again because that's right. That's what it's gonna be, right? And so
You're defying the terms and everything.
well, yeah. So I'm thinking, well, obviously this is what's going to happen again. I'm going to go up. There's going to be some other miracle happen, right? And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Well, as I got closer to that trip, I'm thinking I'm making these decisions again. But I can look back. I know it wasn't, but I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to go out there. Like it's 2 hours. Like when I went to the Rocky Mountains, I stayed there. I don't know if I want to like drive 2 hours, do a hike or two, have to drive all the way back, go get my car from the airport because I parked at the airport, like all these things. It's like, I don't know if I really wanted to do all that. And so I decided that I wasn't going to do that. But I was still going to write my talk in DC. So I did the conference things I needed to. And then there was a day I'd planned. I was like, I just want to write my talk this day. So I get out, I'm sitting in my hotel room, on my couch in the hotel room, and I hear or sense or whatever, why don't you go over to Arlington and write your talk? Okay, remember, I had a plan. I was going to go up this mountain. Go to Arlington National Cemetery and write your talk. Cool. All right. So I did. It was 95 degrees. It was blazing hot. This was awful. Like it was just like walking up was sweaty. I hadn't been there since I think I was a kid. I was like, I'm going to go see the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. I'm going to go check out a couple things. But primarily, it was like, I'm going to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And so I take the subway over and I hike back quite a bit, carrying my backpack with all my stuff in it. And I go and I see the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And I'd been watching the whole time for like a place to sit where I could just sit and write a talk. Well, I didn't see a bench throughout all that walk until I got almost up to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. Then there's a handful of metal benches here and some other ones. These are the only ones in the shade. So I was like, I'll go up there and see that. And then I'm going to come down. I'm going to sit here and watch or write this talk. So I write this talk, and then I'm inspired during this talk to talk about the veterans and the sacrifice. And ultimately the point being that, all these people died for us, for our freedom, for our country, and this and that. But then there was a greater death, when Christ died for all of us to remove sin. So that was the point of the story, is grace, ultimately.
Yeah.
So there was the inspiration of like I hadn't had these thoughts. This wasn't my idea. It was just like I went over there and that's what I wrote. And so I go and I deliver this talk. Of the 30-ish people on this Emmaus weekend, I think around a third of them were veterans.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea.
You didn't know that before.
Didn't have a clue.
God that knew it.
Exactly. Right. And so that's like this. I've stopped. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Because I had this plan. I was going up there to write it. And then he's like, nah, how about you do this instead?
And that's just like, I mentioned before about God, putting in my heart to plan things ahead of time. It's neat that God can even work in those scenarios where he's the one defining the terms, not me. It's not, if I start thinking it's me, then it's usually not going to go according to plan. But if I am open to hear God's wisdom and his knowledge and him setting the course. He steers me.
Right.
Like you said, it's not coincidental.
Right.
These
Right.
things are worked out because God knows exactly what we need and speaks to us. If we listen. I think a lot of times people don't take the time to listen to God.
Exactly. As I said, that's what my prayer has been, throughout early in this fall, stuff like that. That's what I was praying for, because I know He is, but I think I'm too blind.
Yeah.
And when I look back, like being in the Rocky Mountains, what was the difference? I didn't have a distraction.
Yeah.
A single distraction with me.
Yeah.
I was walking around in the mountains, in nature, listening to praise.
Yeah.
I think I said that, like that. That just it played continually.
Yeah.
I didn't have my family with me. I didn't have people to talk to. On that 16-mile hike, which I think was like 8, 10 hours, something like that, I think I ran into 4 people. Like, I was out there by myself. There was not a single distraction. I couldn't use my phone, right? Like, it was
Yeah.
a distraction-free environment, and I recognize that. I think that's the big problem. So,
And I think over a course of time, if we as people continue to hear God's voice, we can even hear Him sometimes when there is noise. But a lot of people don't know how to recognize that voice. And again, it's not an audible voice, but it's
mhm,
just a stirring. That's
mhm,
just you just know it wasn't your thought.
right,
It wasn't your idea. It was a moment where God just kind of says, "This is what I want you to do," or "This is where I want you to go," or some revelation that He gives us that
yeah,
it's outside of us, but it's
right,
inside of us too.
right,
So that's kind of neat.
yeah, and I think it's for me. It's just been learning to trust, learning to recognize that, and as I said, I'm trying not to say no anymore.
Yeah,
And so when I sense something, I feel like it's coming from Him. Even sometimes when I'm not sure, like if I trust it.
yeah. Uh, I'd like to go back a little bit and just talk about how you and your wife met, and just your family. You know,
So we met in college,
where at?
Otterbein.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, it's it's kind of a cute story, I suppose. So one of my 3 roommates met her roommate, um, and started dating. And I became pretty good friends with my wife's roommate just through this process. I mean, it's
Uh-huh.
just like, because she'd be over our room a lot, and we would just talk, and like,
Mhm.
she was fun. I mean, she was funny, and so we would just joke a lot. And so I think we just kind of grew a friendship, and I think that she kind of shared with Michelle that there's this guy, he was a real nice guy, and um, Michelle's like, I want to have fun right now. So that's at least that's the way she related to me. Like, she wanted to have fun. Like, she wasn't ready to settle
She didn't
down.
want to tie down with
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah. And she basically said that. She's like, from what her roommate was telling her, like, this is the kind of guy I would marry, but I'm not, I don't want to be tied down with that right now. So I'm in college. And so ultimately, I don't even remember. I mean, I don't remember our first date. I say that. I take that off the tape. I remember where we went, but I don't remember any of the details leading up to it. The goofier part was that I was her lab assistant for chemistry, because she was a chemistry biology major, and I was her lab assistant. So I think there I started working my charm.
Yeah.
No, if it's like I can't remember the timeline. It's been
Yeah.
quite a while, but we eventually went out for ice cream. That was our first day. We walked down to Friendly's, got ice cream, and it just grew from there. But it started as our roommates together, then us kind of getting introduced and becoming friends, and then going from there.
Yeah.
So give God credit for that one as well.
Yeah, because you even said her her parents made a difference in your life, or
No doubt.
how'd they do that?
Well, first of all, they showed me what it means to be in-laws. Um, I hit the jackpot with regard to in-laws. First of all, the fact that they're founded in Christ. Second of all, I give them the most credit I could possibly give, because I've never heard them criticize me, and I'm sure over the years that that there are probably a lot of things they disapprove of. I mean, we're different.
Yeah.
We're very different. You know, I'm kind of a, I don't know if I'm called a free spirit, but I'm kind of a goofball. Like, and you know, her dad was a Marine.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Oh,
her dad was he's a funny guy, but like he's pretty no nonsense. Like it's just like there's a right way to do things. That's the way you do things, right? Um, so they've just been a model. They've been a model of what it means to be Christians, to be Christ followers, and model to what it means to be in-laws. And so I've tried to learn from that, so that now that I have an in-law, that I try to try to represent that same kind of thing with them.
yeah.
But honestly, I would say that their unwavering faith has been a huge factor in my life. Um, we have 3 kids. You know, the oldest is 27 now, and she's married and living out in St. Louis.
Wow.
I don't even know that you've ever met her, honestly,
No, I don't
because
think
since
so.
they've been here a couple of times. Next time she's here, I'll make sure I introduce you.
Yeah.
But they've probably been here a couple of times. My son, you might know, he's been here a few times,
I think maybe
two,
I
three
met
inches
him.
taller than me.
Yeah.
Um,
Where's he at now?
he just graduated from Ohio Northern, and he has a job up in Lima.
Okay.
Works for Whirlpool. He's an engineer,
Oh, cool.
so fixing your dishwashers, things
Yeah.
like that. So, and then my youngest now is a junior in college or high school.
Yeah. And she runs cross country.
She runs
Like,
cross country,
yeah.
and this church has been huge for her. Um, You know, I was going to go back to the story with Hope Ministries and the fact that that came through this fall, and I started working with them. To me, it was God saying that the timing wasn't right. And actually, I didn't even tell you this part. Corey, the leader there, told me he texted me back in the spring.
Really? And you didn't get it?
I didn't get it.
Wow.
I went back and I looked.
Yeah.
I did not get it. He swears. He's like, "Oh, I texted you back in the spring." He's like, and I thought maybe you just weren't interested. And I was like, I never got a text from him because I have his number. Like I never got a
Huh.
text from him. And so I think that was partly like a God saying, like, this isn't the right time,
Yeah.
you know? And so then he said, because when I met with him, he said, yeah, like when you said, I don't say no to God anymore, I was like, okay, cool. Cause like in the spring, you blew me off. And I was like, dude, I never got this. And so to me, like, that's just
Yeah,
another
it just
example of that.
wasn't
So,
the time.
and the reason I brought that back up now is 'cause I'm thinking about coming to this church. I told you like about 10 years ago, we had left our previous church under unfortunate conditions or situation. And at the time I was like, well, let's try Porterfield. Like it's only 5 minutes down the road compared to driving to Marietta 25 minutes every time.
Yeah.
And I don't remember everything that went into it. I remember it as my wife thinking or saying like, I don't know, like all the Warren kids go there, which never made sense to me. But I was like, all right. And so we went elsewhere. She relays it differently. I don't really know what the truth is. But we didn't come here at the time.
Different stories. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't come here at the time. But I think, again, looking back now, I see it may have been the plan the whole time because Ashley walked into this church and as a, I don't know, she's 16 now, so maybe as a 12, 13-year-old, walked right into Refuge and instantaneously was in love with this place and was in love with Refuge to the point where she doesn't want to miss church ever.
Yeah.
She does. She gets upset if she misses Sunday night or Wednesday night. There was a time, I hope Justin doesn't see this. There was a time like this summer, or I think it was over the summer. I was like, hey, do you want to go up and see Justin? Because she loves her brother. It's like, do you want to go up and spend a weekend with him? She's like, well, would we have to miss church? and like that warms my heart, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so it was a timing thing, I think. You know,
Yeah.
was she ready for that? Are we here because, you know, God was going to reach her that way?
Yeah.
In other words, in the timing, like had we come when she was 4 or 5 years old, would it have been as impactful as it is now? I don't
Yeah.
know. I tend to believe that no, there's a reason that we weren't here for those 6, 7 years or whatever it was.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what kind of, because that kind of nudge that you had before, what kind of made you kind of interested in Porterfield? Why did you think of this church as an option?
I think I had heard things about the youth group. Maybe I think I'd heard it had a vibrant youth group, which our kids never had, which I didn't really have growing up. I told you my class 6 or 10 people. I could tell you like the previous churches that we were at. One had, you know, a handful of kids, where I taught Sunday school. I was teaching a Sunday school class to high school kids at the time, and it would be 2 to 4 kids would show up, and similarly, you'd look down like the middle school or the junior high or something like that. It'd be 2, 3, 4 kids in it. So that's not next. There was next to nothing. Then after we left that church, we went to a different church where I taught Sunday school for the little kids because Ashley was tiny at the time, and so I taught like kind of preschool, kind of kindergarten up, and it was the same thing. There was like 2 kids. Oftentimes, if Ashley didn't show up, I could be there on my own. There'd be one other kid. So I think that was a lot of it. It was just that there could be an opportunity for a youth
Yeah.
participation.
Wow.
Beyond that, I don't remember any of this. I don't think I knew too much about it. It turns out I knew Pastor Mark, but didn't even realize that because we had worked on something in the past. But I didn't even know
What
he
did
was
you work
down
on in
there.
the past?
It was right before COVID. It was something with the high school or the school was doing this.
Oh, they were
Trying,
like doing like a leadership or
yeah, there was a
or
leadership
like
thing.
just showing different people's backgrounds and stuff. Or,
Yep, and they were kind of
think I
doing a
remember that.
visioning for the future of what Warren was going to be like. And there's a name for it. It's up on the wall down there. I can't remember the name of it because we got cut off right in the middle of COVID. Like we were close to the end. It was like COVID shut everything down.
Oh wow.
I never even knew if they implemented it, the plans that we had talked about. But then I see evidence down there that they actually did. But there was never any follow up or anything like that. So, but anyways, that's why I first met him. I didn't know him. He didn't remember me. And then one day Michelle was talking to him, and he said, "I remember him from somewhere." And he put 2 and 2 together to realize that we were on that together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't know much about Porterfield. I think I knew that there was a youth. I knew a lot of Warren people went there, and that there's probably a good youth group.
Yeah, go back a little bit too, as far as what made you decide that chemistry was where you wanted to go, and as far as
honestly, it's the first thing in school that really challenged me that I also enjoyed.
yeah,
English challenged me, no enjoyment. I didn't enjoy that at all. I was always really good at math. And so actually I was a math and chemistry double major in college because I knew what I wanted to do, but I also didn't want to go to school for another 5 or 6 years to go to graduate school. And so I almost was like, I could become an actuary. So I went for chemistry. I added math because it was like I got about halfway through and I was like, well, I got to take something. I might as well just finish out this second degree. So I really don't know. I enjoyed it. And then when I got into organic chemistry, which is my main focus, it was just like, this was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I didn't know a thing about it before I started it. And it was like, this is just like such a cool area. And just went with it.
Can I ask you this? Do you see God in chemistry?
Yes.
And how do you? What are some? I know there's probably a lot. But.
So that's funny you brought that up. So there was some writer that I came across when I was in graduate school, and I lost it, and I hate the fact that I didn't write it down because I don't. But it was a guy who was like a Harvard, or he was at MIT or something like that, and he talked about the fact that because oftentimes science and religion are at odds. You can't be both, right?
I think that we try to make them at odds, but I don't think they are.
Well, they aren't.
Yeah.
No, they absolutely aren't. And that was this guy's point. He was like I don't know how, as a scientist, you could possibly not believe in God and creation and everything like that. Like I don't know how you could do it. And like he said it so eloquently, and I didn't write it down. I don't know what it was. And to this day, I regret that I don't have that. But there's a specific topic in chemistry, in organic especially, and I don't want to go into too many details because it's not nerd hour. But it's like there are molecules that are like your hands. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's right hands and left hand versions of molecules, okay? And what I mean by that is like your hands are exactly the same, right? But they're not exactly the same.
Yeah.
Right? Because no matter how hard you try, they're mirror images of each other. But no matter how hard you try to match them, you can't match them. Like if I try to, like one of them's upside down.
Yeah.
Right? Or if I do it this way, then my pinky's on my thumb. Okay. So they're exactly the same, but they're not exactly the same. They're what we call non-superimposable, right? They're mirror images, but they're not exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Right? And so turns out like in our bodies, like the proteins, the peptides, things are made of these things called amino acids. All of those molecules have this same kind of property. A lot of things don't. Okay, I mean probably I don't know what you put percentages on it, but um, I don't know, let's say 3/4 of molecules don't have this particular property, but some do, and proteins, peptides, all this stuff do. Um, so it turns out that every single molecule like that in our bodies is a right hand, if you will,
Yeah.
right? They're all one hand. Okay. Well, in chemistry, it's impossible to make a single hand. It's impossible. If you create molecules that have what we call handedness, you have to get both. Like it's impossible to create one and not the other.
Huh.
And yet we are all made up of one hand.
That's awesome.
Okay. It can't happen. It's impossible for it to happen on its own. It couldn't have just evolved into that, because had that been the case, you'd have got this and you'd have got that.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah. That's awesome. That
And
even
by the
in
way, I get a cool demo for that someday. If I
yeah.
ever do a magic show for you guys again, I've
Yeah,
got a
we
really
need to
cool demo
we
that
need to
shows
schedule
that.
that for a family event, because that was another thing I wanted to talk about, is that how God led you to do those. But you know, to what you were talking about, that it's so cool that even in a molecule,
Hmm.
something so small, it's like a cell. It's like there's more complexity. There isn't such a thing as a simple cell. Like
There's not.
you
The simplest cell is more complicated than anything we've ever designed.
yeah,
By far. And the cool thing, so you know the phrase like the hand of God, right? You always hear
yeah,
about the hand of God. So when we talk about this in chemistry, we talk about the molecule's handedness, right? That's what we talk about, the hand, because it relates like how it's like your hands. And so it's a phrase that I've kind of come up with, and the way I would describe it in terms of like if I did the magic show again and talked about this, to me, this is the handedness of God. I mean, it's essentially proof of God's existence
yeah,
is the fact that these molecules are one hand. It's the handedness of God that He provided that evidence for us.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I remember C.S. Lewis talking about that there is, we can say that Christianity is simple, but what does simple really mean?
Hmm.
Because once you look at something that's simple and you dive in deeper into it, then it becomes more complex. And he talks about that with Christianity, that Christianity is more complex, even
Right.
though it's simple, it's complex,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And that's the beauty of creation. And, like just even how, like you were mentioning, them being on the Rockies, that God's using creation to speak. He's using, his voice to speak.
Hmm.
And it's just neat how God orchestrates these things. And sometimes we don't even pay attention to what he's doing or what he's saying.
Yeah, and I think just from my own experience, what I've learned is He knows how to reach us. He knows how to reach each of us in our own way. As I told you earlier, like we grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, but my parents owned a trailer. Like we owned a travel trailer, and we piled all these kids in the back of a station wagon. Back in the days, we didn't have to wear seatbelts, by the way.
Yeah,
And we just backseat. Well, we're back to playing games. We're rolling around, getting. And but we travel across the country. That's all I knew. Like I never went to Disney World.
yeah.
Well, actually, in band, I went to Disney World, but like our parents never went to. We didn't even go to beaches. We went to national parks. I've been to basically almost every national park in the contiguous U.S.
That's awesome.
Because that's what we did, and it was the coolest thing. So that's like where my heart is in the national parks and in nature and things like that. So much so that when we got married and I planned our honeymoon and didn't tell my wife where we're going, I took her to the Tetons in Yellowstone, and she loved it. And that's now we've passed that love on to our kids. But my point is that that's my love, like my true love. It was instilled in me by my parents, and that's where He just shone everything on me in this moment.
That's very true too, that God will speak to us at places where we care about, or
Hmm.
that move us already, that we don't have to go somewhere different necessarily, that God speaks to where we are,
Right. Right.
because he loves us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I look back at that moment in the Rockies and know that it's the only time I've ever been on a trip like that by myself. I've been on plenty of these trips to these conferences, but it's like I'm in a city, like, and I'm in a conference, I'm in my hotel room, I'm not doing anything exciting at all. But this one time I went out there and only experienced that because I was there by myself. So I think even to that level, like he's in that much control. If my wife had been there, we were talking all the time, I wouldn't have had that experience.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had those things in my ear. Like it had to be the perfect setup for that event to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he knows how to reach us and how to place us in the right place.
Going back to your presentation of chemistry and using that for the gospel, would you care to share for people that maybe not know that?
Sure. So chemistry magic shows are not uncommon. I mean, a lot of colleges will do that. Probably some high schools will do that. There's a lot of just cool demonstrations that you could do, and I've been doing them for the last 25 years since I've been at Marietta, mostly for elementary schools, but I've done them for just about any group you could want. And I, having seen them so many times, I started just to. There we go with I again. Okay, I'm back up. I thought I was noticing things, right?
Yeah.
But now I can look back and go, like, God was just revealing things in these demos where I was seeing something beyond just like, hey, it's a cool chemistry demo. I would relate it to a biblical story or a biblical principle or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is so cool. And finally, it was probably just like God smacked me upside the head, like, dude, you think this is for you? It was like,
just for your enjoyment.
Yeah, like, But I think that's what I was like. And finally, I was like, I should be sharing this. And so it actually was a long time. It was probably a decade ago that at a former, it could have been more than that. I guess probably more than that, that we put together a church night at my college, and church members came there, and I did the first demo where I tried to relate it, and it probably wasn't that good because it was the first time I had done it. But then a few years ago, I was like, I want to make this a thing. Like I want to start doing this all over the place. And I contacted you, and I gave one show here.
Yeah.
I've given probably 3 others since then at different churches. Still waiting to hear from Pastor Mark because he was supposed to set me up in like Zanesville, like with a bunch or something like that. So to the point, I even have cards now. That's like, yeah, I've got a card, and I should have brought some, but
Yeah, I'd
didn't
like
know we
to
were going to
have
talk about
some.
this. But yeah, and I'm not looking to make money off of these things. Like,
Oh, I know.
this is not something.
Your heart
where,
is to share the gospel.
yeah, this isn't about. I don't ask for any money.
Yeah.
I think one church gave me some money. I was like, I'll just put it into like resupplying what I need. But it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here trying to make money off of this. Oh yeah, I did it at camp. I did them at my sister's. They run a camp for not orphans, but just I guess kids that were adopted, something like that. Through their church. And so I went up there. I mean, I drove. This shows you like it's just. I drove 2 hours out into the woods somewhere up in Northeast Ohio, and took
Not sure if you're
everything
gonna
in my
get
van.
lost.
Yeah. Thankfully you have Waze maps, because I wouldn't have got there on my own. Like it's over the hills and this and that. Got out there, like took everything in my van, set the whole darn thing up. Gave 2 shows because they had girls and boys separate. So I gave 2 shows, cleaned the whole darn thing up, drove back down here. It's not about making money. It was about sharing the gospel with these kids and doing it in a way that they'd be memorable, right?
Yeah.
That because everything in these shows I can't take credit for. Like a lot of them stuff that I created one of them. The rest of them are things that I've just taken from other people have done. In terms of the actual demos,
Yes.
like I put the Christian spin on them, but every one of them is just cool, right? They're just cool things to observe.
That's what I was
So
going
then
to say. It's really neat that God created the rules of that, right? I mean, as far as what's going to interact with the whatever chemicals you put together, or what scenarios you're going to put with the different elements or different materials. I just think that's powerful. That basically you're taking something, the rules that God has designed in nature, and using it a way to speak about him, in another clear way that catches people's attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm not taking any credit for it at all. I'm not taking credit for the idea. It's just,
No,
I
but
think
I
it
mean,
was an
It's
inspiration.
neat how and I think that's what we miss out on a lot for all of us. That God can use our skill set, our talents, or our knowledge, like you have, to do something unique, to share the gospel in a different way. I think if everybody did that, whether it was poetry, music, or whatever talent they're given, to look at it as an opportunity to share the gospel in a unique way for people to understand what God's able to do.
I think so too, because I think just being in education, people learn different ways, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's so many different ways that people learn,
Yeah.
and so many different ways that people are impacted. And that's I take away from whether it be Emmaus, giving a talk at Emmaus, whether it be giving a demo like that or a show like that, or just in witnessing, whatever. Like, if you impact one person, you've done the job.
Absolutely.
And so that's why, so if I give a show and one person remembers this aspect of it, and because it impacted them, or somebody else, has impacted this other way. Here's what that just made me think of. One of the most convicting questions I've ever gotten was Pastor Mark. It was during a sermon. It was probably soon after we got here. Um, and I shared this actually in my recent Emmaus talk. Um, and you may or may not remember this, but I can't remember the sermon. I can't remember because you remember one moment, right?
Yeah.
And that, again, that's
Sure.
why I'm thinking about this, because in a show I'm giving, you might remember one thing. So in this in this sermon, Pastor Mark says, I think his question was, if you stop being a Christian tomorrow, would anybody notice?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, because being a lukewarm Christian for most of my life, sure, I was a Christian in my heart.
Yeah.
Would anybody where I work know as a Christian? Would people on the street? Would people? He's just a nice guy, right? He's a nice. That's what was convicted to me. It was like, nobody would know I'm a Christian because I don't wear that. I don't share that. I
It was more of a private thing at that.
It was a private thing. Yeah. Yeah. Which isn't the right thing. Right. So God's been working on me hard
Yeah.
in recent years, or I'm finally like at a point where I'm noticing.
Yeah.
He probably was working on me the whole time, but I've just,
That's what I was going to say. I think he's been working on you. It's like, there are spurts where we can, and being at the right church and being around the right people can help galvanize that growth, that we can see more growth at a quicker pace when we're in the right environment, that will help, iron sharpeneth iron,
Yeah. Funny you say that, because as you're talking, when I finally agreed to say yes to go back to Emmaus, which again led me to here, it's a close friend. This is a friend of mine who's I've been friends with for almost the entire time we've been here. So let's say almost 25 years. And he was actually the head of Emmaus in this area, rotating off after this year. But I remember this very distinctly when either when he was asking me to do it or when I was still saying no, and he said to me, like, it'd be great for you because then you'd have a good group of Christian friends or Christian brothers or something like that. And to show you where I was in terms of being lukewarm, I didn't answer him. I probably like, oh, okay. But in my head, I was like, I never said I wanted a bunch of Christian friends. Like, really, that was my
that
thought.
wasn't what like your thought process.
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
who told you I was looking for that? And because I was just like, I'm content in my life, right? It's like I'm content in my.
He was speaking more of what you needed that you didn't realize you needed.
Yeah. Well, and so what's happened is between them and then between this, here and being with the men's group and like, it's just put me on fire.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what I needed. And, because one of the prayers that we often say in Emmaus is like, you pray for the person who needs this experience the most and for the one who thinks he needs it the least. And that's kind of what that was for me. I was like, I didn't ask for a bunch of Christian friends. And now like that's who I want to be around all the time.
Yeah. Thinking about that too, that's what we want for every man in our church and really in our community, is to experience the kind of things that you've been experiencing, that they hear God's voice, that they understand that God wants to speak directly to them, for them to have fellowship, for them to have the biblical aspect of things, and then for them to have a mission, a purpose, like you're describing with Walk to Emmaus, and even with the Hope Ministry, serving there, and I know me and you have talked about other things maybe in the future that we'd like to do, but having those three things of pillars in our life where we have the biblical, the fellowship, and the missional aspect of our lives, that we're going in a direction for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the biggest thing I'd like to encourage people to take away from your story. And I'll ask you that question, what you would like people to learn from you. But I think that, our heart for as a church here, we want people to experience that in a real way, that they are being shaped by God, because we focus on that. We focus on providing mission and fellowship and biblical aspect in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those three things are very critical. What would you like people to take away from your life?
So I would say what is most important to me now is what God is calling us to do. Um, we're called to make disciples, and anything else doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Because I had to answer the question that you all sent, and I think that one of the questions was something like that, like how would you want people to remember you?
Yeah.
And I answered like, oh, I'd like students remember me this way, my family remember me in this way, but all that's fleeting. All that doesn't matter. I think back to like some great people I knew in my life. For example, my grandfather was a band director for what was called the Warren Junior Military Band. They traveled the world. They were world renowned. He met leaders of any country you can think of, shook hands with presidents. I mean, they were an award-winning small little band out of Warren, Ohio,
Yeah.
known the world over. He's been dead for 30 years. Who remembers him? The band doesn't exist anymore. Those things, no matter what, I want a student to remember me as, caring about him or her, or I want but they'll be gone. We'll be forgotten. Okay, that's just the way it is, right? It doesn't matter how great you are. You're going to be forgotten. So the only thing that matters is what we do for Christ. And so it's taken me a long time to get to that mentality of that's what I want my legacy to be, is that, this was somebody who lived for Christ. This is somebody who was willing to share that. And that's what his life was about. Because we have jobs, right? You have families, you have jobs, you still live, like the worldly life. But in the end, there's only one thing that's ultimately going to matter.
Yeah.
And that's what I would want people to be, to look at me and say that.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool that you're doing some of that now.
Yeah. Before it's too late.
Yeah. Well, and just like we talked about, one life is what matters. It's one life at a time. People tease me about a starfish story. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but
I don't know if I know the starfish story.
Yeah, it's basically the idea of, it was a young boy on a beach and he saw thousands of starfish. And I was going to get a chuckle because I'm sharing this story again. But he sees all these starfish and he picks up each one and he tosses it back in the ocean to save it. An older gentleman comes up to him and says, "Son, you can't save them all." And the little boy picks up another one and he says, "Yeah, but I can save this one."
Yeah, cool.
And the idea is, if we could just focus on one at a time versus trying to, we can try to, get the masses. But if Jesus can take 12 and change the world, if I could just take a few and pour in to others, whoever that is, because whether it's at Hope Ministries or here at the church, or maybe it would be a student, that you pour into,
right,
that you're developing people and helping them grow in their faith.
Right.
And, so I think it's neat what God's doing in your life. And is there anything else you'd like to talk about we didn't get a chance to share, or, things that maybe you have overcome or struggles?
I don't know that anything immediately comes to mind. I'm sure there are, but we've kind of, and this is kind of the way my brain works. I'm a little ADHD. Like I'm all over the map here, I'm sure I'll walk out and be like, "Oh, I could have talked about that."
Totally
but like
fine.
honestly, at this moment,
I do think we covered a lot of things, and I thought that was neat because, you shared a personal struggle you had with how sometimes you can maybe say things that are
Mm-hmm.
sarcastic
Mm-hmm.
and not really fully understand the impact of those. And the fact that you needed accountability through the men's group, and of course the ministries that you're involved with now, and that it's neat for me to see your growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that you had a hunger, even just starting to come here, that you wanted more. You were tired of being lukewarm,
Right.
that you wanted to have a fire about you. And it's neat to see that that's happening, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of neat to see where God's taking you from.
Yeah, and I would give a lot of credit, obviously, to God, but also, I mean, I think to you, to Pastor Adam, to the men's group, to just the different people that have impacted me
Yeah.
and
Well, that's cool
encouraged me.
about being a
So,
part of a village where you allow others,
hmm
going back to that Proverbs 27:17, if we allow godly people to be around us, and we're working together on a common goal, it really galvanizes our faith and helps us, just like you were talking about, walk to Emmaus too.
hmm
Yeah.
But I think in keeping that fire burning, because I think it burns out pretty easily
Yes.
if you don't have support.
Yeah.
That's what happened with the mass. For 25 years, we walked away from that, and that I could, if I were to stop attending regularly, if I were to stop going to men's group, things like that, I'm sure it would burn out again. Like
Yeah.
it's you need that. You need to be uplifted and encouraged, and hopefully that's what I'm able to do for people.
Well, I want to say I'm excited for the future of our church, because I think that of course, it's not about me. It's not about who we have necessarily here on staff. It's us as a church having a singular focus of
Hmm
living out our mission statement of loving people, leading people. In other words, we don't make excuses. We're going to be the ones to set the tone, because we want to put our focus on Christ,
hmm
who is the life giver. We know that change doesn't happen with us. It happens with a relationship with Christ.
Right.
So, I'm excited what God's doing here, and I'm excited to see how God continues to use the men of our church. And I think your testimony is really where a lot of guys are, where we want to see that change happen in them, from going from a pew sitter, somebody that comes and maybe serves in some capacity,
Yeah.
but that fire to where they're actually engaged in the relationship of Christ.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage any guys in this church just to get involved in something. It'll change you.
Yeah.
It's changed me in a huge way. I mean, they put up the thing that's like, hey, we need ushers. I'm like, how easy is that?
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe that we still have signs up there for ushers. Because
Yeah.
like, how easy is that? It's like
Yeah.
once a month, you greet people, you count. Like, it's not that hard of a job, right? The mowing team, like we need.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I can mow.
Yeah.
I get to drive around out there with the Sweet Zero turn mower. It's a lot better than my push mower. So it's like there's so many opportunities to do that. But yeah, I would just say get involved in something. And I would say the men's group has something planned that's going to be that we're working on plans right now. It's just in the infant stage. You probably even know what it is yet, because I doubt that Scott has talked to you yet. But if we have something that we planned and hope to put into, like, maybe in the spring, and it'll be an invitation to every man in this church
Great.
to take part in this thing. So
Yeah. Well, that's what we want to see, and so thankful that you're a part of this church, and thank you for just even like that. And I agree with you that if you just even get into some involvement in service, it gives you a chance to be around some other people,
right.
and to see that it's not just you coming here; it's that
Yeah.
you're part of the solution.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if you don't think you need some good Christian friends,
Yes. Yes.
because you may find out that's like the biggest blessing you've ever had, because
Yeah.
that's been mine.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate
Absolutely.
you taking this time to talk to us.
Sure.
We appreciate your story.
I appreciate you having me on here.